it was a very, very big stigma that existed in Iran that we never knew about, that our family faced.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Charlie Stern. This is 914 Wired, and my partners in this endeavor are Ardina Seward and Peter Moses. Welcome, Ardina and Peter.
Hi, Charlie.
And we've got some very special guests today. So this is going to be kind of a different 914 Wired. This show is all about politics and education and culture, and we interview people on all kinds of topics, everything related to Westchester County in New York, and how life is impacted in Westchester, a whole variety of different ways. And we've interviewed authors, and we've interviewed politicians, certainly tons of them, and we've interviewed all kinds of people. This is different, Peter and Ardina, because today we're with Danielle Dardashti and Galeet Dardashti, and they have produced an unbelievable podcast series. It's a 6-episode podcast series, and I'm just going to put it right out there. The title of it is The Nightingale of Iran. Now, that didn't tell me really exactly what to expect when I heard about it, but then I checked it out. Danielle and Galeet come from a musical family. They live in Westchester. You live in Westchester now, right, Danielle?
We both live in White Plains.
Okay, still living in Westchester, but there's something unusual about their backgrounds. Danielle and Galeet are from this musical family, happens to be Jewish. Their father is from Iran, and he came to the United States at the age of 19, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and so this 6-part podcast series is a quest to kind of answer the question, Dad, why'd you come over here? And are there things that we need to understand about this background to understand who you are? It's a audio documentary about identity, belonging, and music. So there's a geopolitical layer to it. There's a musical layer to it. And there's a family story there as well. So,
But also, one of the major issues I would think is when people come from foreign countries, Jews come from foreign countries, they don't like to explain the countries of their origin. They are usually very quiet about it. And what I was reading about the two of you, that you lived in a home where you weren't given a lot of answers. You didn't. Your family didn't talk about this.
hold on,
We
Peter.
also, yeah.
Hold on, Peter. I need to tee up one more important component to this story. This isn't just any guy from Iran who came to the
No.
United States. Their dad, Fareed Dardashti, was a popular television star for about 6 months in the 1960s, I gather. And he was like a tremendous hit. I mean, I don't know if this is the exact analogy, but he was kind of like the Donny Osmond of his day in Iran. Danielle and Galeet, welcome to 914 Wired. How am I doing?
You're doing pretty good, Charlie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, so our grandfather was called the Nightingale of Iran. And our grandfather, the name of the show, The Nightingale of Iran, our grandfather was a very famous singer in Iran for 2 decades, for the 50s and 60s in Iran. He sang at the Shah's Palace and in concert halls all over the country. And our father, yes, for 6 months in 1961, 1962, was a teen idol on television. And then right at the height of when our father became a teen idol, he left the country and came to America to go to college. And it's always been a mystery to Galit and I why he left, how he could have left at that moment in time when it was a golden age for Jews in Iran. And soon after our father left, our grandfather and the whole rest of our family left Iran also. So that was sort of the impetus for that, created our desire to really look into this story. It's not that people didn't tell us about our family history. People told us about our family history a ton growing up. It's that the story didn't quite make 100 like make sense to us. We were like, wow, they had this great life in Iran. They were both really famous and they had no qualms about leaving. They just left during like, and so there were a lot of gaps and omissions in the story, we felt, and we decided to go deeper and really find out what was going on there.
Now, you're the co executive producers of this 6 part series. Danielle, you have a journalism background. You're the host, writer, director, and senior producer. Galeet, you are the producer, subject matter expert, certainly musical director, and you each bring different things to it. When did you get together and say, we got to interview mom and dad? We got to get this thing organized. When did you, when,
Yeah,
because a lot of people want to know about their family history. You have taken it to a whole nother level.
yeah. I mean, it didn't come out of the blue. Um, you know, I come from an academic background, and I've been very interested in my family history for a long time, and have explored musically my family background and have explored Persian music over the years. But, coming together with Danielle, the two of us together asked different questions. And this really happened. Part of the impetus was that Danielle and I had more time to think about things because it was the pandemic and I wasn't traveling as much, I wasn't lecturing as much, I wasn't performing as much. And the same for Danielle and her work. Her work slowed down as well. And so we had time, the two of us, to talk about some of these things, which honestly, we didn't realize we didn't know until we started doing interviews and started talking to people. We realized that things didn't add up and didn't make sense at that point. And we at first thought we were making a documentary film. And as we started asking questions, and as we saw that we had this treasure trove of music and conversations, it became very clear that we had a podcast in our hands.
So
The
there's,
audio, yeah, the audio archive, it's like it's a gold mine that we found. And you asked Charlie, did we know that this existed? Had we heard it before? So the thing is that the tapes are mainly, so the tapes begin, the first tape that we found is from 1959, and they go all the way up until the time that people started having iPhones when they stopped recording on tape and it became digital. So really all the way from like 1959 up until the year 2000 are these tapes that were in our parents' basement. And from the 60s, these are these large reel to reel tapes that there was no way for anyone to play them for decades.
mhm.
So they've been there in the basement and no one's like I didn't even we didn't know they were there, and even if
No,
we had known they were there, nobody could listen to them. So those
or
are
we
the
didn't know. Yeah, we didn't
and then there
know
were
that
and
this
then there were I mean
existed.
we knew that our parents had a lot of crap in their basement. Put it that way. But we did not know at all
No.
what was down there.
So what occurred to me listening to this is that there was a couple of things going on. It was a musical family. So along the way, it sort of made sense that somebody would have made recordings. So that part, and so there's a lot of music to listen to. Dad, your grandfather, they were recording artists. They were musicians. So it would make sense that along the way there were recordings. They spent time in radio and studios producing shows, but it is unusual to have a lot of the dialogue that you have access to, and
So
there's an
I'll tell
unusual
you
story
this,
behind that.
Charlie, it isn't unusual among immigrant families from that time in the 60s. And the reason is that long distance telephone calls were very expensive, flights were very expensive, and it is extremely common that families, their main way of having long conversations and filling each other in on what was going on in their lives, to a very large degree, were through tapes that they recorded. And sometimes they didn't even mail the tapes. It was like, Uncle Yaakov is going to Iran in 3 months. Let's make a
Give him the
tape and
tape.
send it with him to take
Right.
with him. So, and it's interesting because since our podcast has come out, I have heard from numerous people who are, all different nationalities, not necessarily Iranian, not necessarily Jewish, who have said, our family did the same thing. I'm going to go search in my parents' basement and
Yeah.
attic and see if I can find these tapes. So it's crazy because like we know details about like what colors our grandparents were painting their house in Iran in
Yeah.
1963
Wow.
because they're filling our father in. Our father was in college in America. So it's like it's really unbelievable to get all of that information, but interestingly enough, it's not that uncommon that it existed. It is uncommon that they didn't throw it away and that we found it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question. How much of his, there's music and there's music, and I take it that your dad's style was Mizrahi style, correct? Was it Mizrahi music, not Mizrahi?
No, so our father was singing. So our grandfather was singing classical Iranian music
Okay.
on the radio in Iran.
Art music.
it's art music that is like the classic. It's not Jewish music. So when
Right.
you say Mizrahi, that's Jewish Middle Eastern music.
Well,
Our grandfather,
Mizrahi refers to Jews who came to the Middle East, came to Israel from the Middle East and North Africa, and this was pre-Israel. So, so they were performing already in Iran. They were singing either Persian classical music, in the case of our grandfather, on the radio, or in our dad's case, he was kind of singing international music in Iran, which was really popular already. A lot of sounds that you would hear from all different countries. He was even singing Israeli songs in Iran. He was singing songs from Spain. He was singing international music that
So-
people liked in Iran.
and
So, Galeet, just for the
to
sake of
circle back
illustrating
and
this,
yeah,
Yep.
just to circle back and clarify that, Ardina, they're both Jewish, men in Iran, but neither of them were singing Jewish music in a
Right.
professional. Yeah, when we talk about them singing on TV and on the radio, it was them
Mainstream.
singing mainstream. Their fans were mainly Muslims.
but that came
Ah.
along. That came along later in the story with your father. If I can, I want to play maybe 25 seconds so that folks can get a sense of how the show flows and how the show is structured. Let me know. You should be able to hear this.
But I'll keep on searching.
He was a
hearing this?
rising star and left it all behind. It never made sense to us. But that's because we were missing a critical piece of the puzzle. Galeet and I didn't understand what Jewish Iranians thought about Jewish musicians.
Once again.
So there's a little clip for us there, just
That's
to
a
give.
good clip, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's just a sense of how you have woven together the musical recordings, the narration, your own narration, conversations from other recordings, and it goes on like this for 5 episodes. I gather episode number 6, and the final episode is scheduled to be released tomorrow. And before we forget to mention this, you've got this tour planned, right? We're going to be in White Plains on the 19th of March, and then you've got multiple dates, and people can go to Nightingaleofiran.com.
Just Nightingale of Iran, nightingaleofiran.com. And we have a list of our events there. And our Westchester event is coming up next week on March 19th at Beit Am Shalom Synagogue, which is our synagogue.
There you go. So
I-
there's just
Mine too.
an intense amount of interest. Go ahead, Ardina.
Yeah, I have a quick question. At that time in 1960, just listening to that short clip, he could have been singing right here in New York. I mean, there's not a lot to distinguish between the American chord style, if you will, and the Iranian chord style. So at that time,
Well,
it
What?
was
that
That
was in
was
New
him
York.
singing an English, an American song. He was
okay,
singing right then.
but still, I maybe I didn't clarify. Maybe I didn't say it properly. But his style, I was expecting, sort of a minor chord, more Middle Eastern, if you will, type of music. But it's not. I mean, he's very distinct in his voice, in his chords, and in the way he sings. That style is pretty
No,
Standard.
different.
No, well, what you heard him singing right there was just like a American
an American
popular.
song, an American pop song,
Yeah.
not anything. It wasn't anything Persian.
Right, but even
Let,
but
let
you
me,
know
let me, can I add
but
something at some point?
even
Okay.
the expression. So the thing is, how acceptable was his style in Iran at that time, or was Iran in 1961 so international that the music style that he had was totally incorporated into the traditional Iranian culture?
Okay, so our dad, who we were just listening to in that clip, he was singing songs that were not mostly in Persian. He was
Right.
mostly singing songs, like I said, from Israel, from the United States, from Mexico, Spain,
International popular
Greek.
music.
So, that was popular. There were people who were doing that, like Joan Baez, right here in the United States, and and Iran was very, very influenced by the Western world. And you have to remember this was a different era where uh, Iran saw itself very much in alignment with the West, and so
This was
the
a
music.
time, Ardina, when the Shah of Iran, um, Reza, Mohammed
Reza
Reza
Sephardi. Yeah.
No,
Pahlavi,
Pahlavi,
Pahlavi.
Pahlavi.
Pahlavi,
Alevi.
Pahlavi.
So when Charlie played that clip, you were referencing something about what you didn't know about your family's view of Jewish musicians. What was the outcome from that?
I think you need to listen to the series, Peter, because that is a big, big turning point of the series. Actually, Charlie picked a really good spot because in episode 2 and 3, you learn a lot about it wasn't just our family's view of musicians, it was a very, very big stigma that existed in Iran that we never knew about, that our family faced. And yes, they were extremely, extremely popular with Muslims in Iran, but we had no idea about the stigma that existed within the Jewish community
Yeah.
about musicians.
So
So
Galit,
opening
Galit,
this,
You are a singer. It's one of the things you do is you sing. Do you sing with your father?
Oh, well, I did have a period where I sang a little bit with my dad. He would kind of be a guest. And we grew up performing together as a family, all five of us. So as a kid, I performed together quite a bit with my father, my mother, my two sisters. But mostly not with my dad, just as an adult, that is. I performed a little bit with him as a guest.
but we should mention that you have a new record album, which you can tell us what the title is. And from what I'm able to glean, though I didn't hear it, you put together as sort of a Natalie Cole type of thing on that album, where you
Yeah.
sing at the same time as he does off a previously recorded track. Correct?
Right, so that's my grandfather, not my father. And our grandfather, who was one of the most famous singers of Persian classical music, um, he was Jewish, of course, and I found this recording of him singing the Jewish prayers of Slichot, which are these prayers that you sing before the Jewish New Year to kind of get you in the mode for this very kind of intense period. And it's so beautiful the way he sings, but it sounds exactly like the way he sings when he sings Persian classical music, when he sings in Persian, when he sings this Jewish music. And I speak Hebrew, and so I could relate and I could connect to this Jewish music that he was singing. And so I wanted to connect with him. I didn't have a shared language. Danielle and I both did not have a shared language with our grandfather. We didn't, we didn't speak French, we didn't speak Persian, which were really the languages that he spoke. And so musically, I could connect with my grandfather in this way. And so I sampled him and I was able to sing with him throughout the album, and it was really, really exciting and moving project for me.
And that album's called what?
It's called Monajat.
Being Persian was not a part of our upbringing. It was like a side interest of our dad's. It was like if your dad is into some kind of sport and you that's not part of your identity. It was something that our dad was, interested in, an interest of his, but not something that had to do with our family growing up. Our dad was really good at adapting and assimilating when he got to America and giving American Jewish audiences what they wanted, which
What they
was
could relate
hear-
to.
Yeah, what they could relate to, which was Ashkenazi Jewish music. So he learned that, and he became an Ashkenazi cantor in America.
Now, Galeet, you taught at some point at JTS, right?
Yeah, the Jewish Theological
Yes,
Seminary,
that's
where
that's
our
very
dad.
Ashkenazic.
Oh yeah, I mean that's where you learn how to become an Ashkenazi cantor, and
Right.
so of course, yeah, I mean things have changed quite a bit, but not that much. But things have changed quite a bit since our father was there. I mean, they hired me, somebody who is really entrenched in educating people in Middle Eastern Jewish music and culture. But I was only there temporarily. And the Jewish Theological Seminary teaches, and also the Hebrew Union College, the Reform movement and the Conservative movement, the biggest branches, they teach cantorial music that's Ashkenazi almost exclusively. And so if you are not from an Ashkenazi tradition, you're going to be learning a tradition that is not your own if you want to become a cantor. So that was a very unique experience that my father had at the
And
Jewish
to
Theological
clarify,
Seminary.
I just want to clarify, when we say Ashkenazi, for any listeners who don't know, that's Eastern European. That's like the whitest type of Jew. And so we're talking about,
Well, Eastern and Western would include also
yes,
Western European.
Yeah.
yes.
But I think that's what
My grandfather was a German Jewish cantor.
But I think that's what makes this story fascinating, because, and no knock on Ashkenazi Jews, but we hear those stories day in and day out.
We do.
And that's our world. This is a different story. And that's what I meant when I said, Peter and Ardina, this is something different. Because what Danielle and Galeet are doing is talking about how this family really bridged worlds, and maybe you didn't know that much about it growing up, but then you started asking questions. And I'm wondering, when you thought about doing this, what was that conversation like? You had to have prepared your father at some point. Dad, I got to ask you about this stuff. Was there a point where he ever said, why the 20 questions? What is this?
Not really.
Why all of a sudden do you need to know why I left Iran when I was 19 years old? Why I
Not
left
really.
Israel? Why we did this and that and the
No.
other?
He's
No.
been really amazing and
Yeah.
open and been excited that we've been interested in interviewing him.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Do you think he wanted to talk about it? Is it possible he needed to get it off his chest? Any of that?
I don't know. I mean, he comes at it with real joy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
not like a
agree.
get it off my chest kind of pain sort of thing.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
honestly, I have never heard from him anything about, he doesn't talk about feeling marginalized. He was very excited to be able to be a cantor. I mean, I think for him, it was just, wow, okay, I'm Jewish, and this is how they do Judaism here in the United States. So I guess I'll learn this American version of Judaism.
It's like
Yeah.
somebody changing their accent, like when they move from the South in the United States to the North, because they feel pressure to do that, and they don't necessarily I mean, it's a very subtle
Yeah.
and bizarre kind of marginalization. It happens within all kinds of different communities where
Yeah.
there's pressure to become more like what the majority is, and
Exactly.
but our father doesn't talk about it like it was a bad thing. Even now he doesn't feel like it was a bad thing. It's
Now,
not. Yeah.
you mentioned that there's a third sister. Is
Yeah,
she is
Yeah.
she involved in any of this journey with you two?
she sure is. So our sister is a rabbi, and she's the rabbi of Kane Street Synagogue in Brooklyn. And we are doing our first in-person event. Our big sort of like launch party is this Thursday in Brooklyn at Michelle's Synagogue. And then our next in-person event is at our own synagogue here in White Plains at Beit Am. But yeah,
Which is on
Michelle,
for anyone watching. Betam Shalom is on Soundview Avenue near by the corner of Old Mamaroneck Road. There's a large parking lot. There's enough parking for anyone who
but
wants
you
to
have
come.
to be registered for the
You have to.
event.
I have to register Charlie.
Yeah,
And
you
Ardeen, if
can't
you want to go, I have to
Yeah.
register you.
Okay.
I
you
want
cannot
to
just
learn
show
more
up.
about it.
You have to be registered for the event. But you'll find out in episode 6 of our series, our sister is much younger than us. And she didn't have the exact same experience as us. She's 10 years younger. Yeah, well,
We
wait,
like
let
to
me ask
we
you,
like to break news here on 914
when
Wired.
is this
Yeah.
coming out? Is this coming out today?
This will come out Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, so I don't know how long this lasts for. We just found this
Breaking
out. Like
news.
Yeah.
breaking news. You're like first to know, Charlie. You're
Please.
breaking
Yes.
the story. This
Yep.
happened right before we started this interview. We found out, we got a text that we are listed under new and noteworthy this week on Apple Podcasts. Now, I don't know, does that start on Monday and go through the following Sunday? I have no idea, but we are listed as like a featured podcast on Apple, and I assume that's going to really drive a lot of traffic, and we're
All right.
excited
Yeah.
about it. But there've been a
Yeah.
lot of exciting things that have happened this week
Yeah.
for
The
us.
term in the podcasting world, it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up because when that thing goes on the suggested area of Apple, which is very hard to get on, you're going to get hundreds of downloads. So
I'll
this
tell
is
you this, Charlie. It's a
yeah.
great show. If anybody has listened to it, you know that. But we also have a really great team that we're working with. This was a
Yep.
team effort.
Yep.
Galeet and I have a great production team and a great team of a very scrappy small team of PR and marketing people who are working with us, who are really amazing.
I know you
So
have a media partner called Jewish Telegraphic Agency.
Jewish telepathic.
but they can
Wow,
also
that would
read
be
your mind. They can
Yeah.
Yeah,
also
that would
read
be
your mind,
totally
Charlie.
different. That
Maybe
would
they
be
could do both. Maybe they could
Yeah.
do both. And others. So we wish you all the luck in the world. It's a learning experience. Galeet and Danielle Dardashti, thank you for being our guests. You have asked your parents the hard questions that kids seldom ask. What was going on before I was born? And in the process, you've uncovered a tremendous amount of history and knowledge and understanding and music. And it's a wonderful 6-part podcast. I recommend everybody go check it out. It's called The Nightingale of Iran, nightingaleofiran.com. If you're not sure where to find it, just search for it. And you can certainly find it on Apple Podcasts. And you have answered the question, what is the Motreb stigma? That is something I never would have known about in a million years. And it's one of many of the sort of unlocking points of this podcast where you drive toward answering the question, why'd you leave Iran? So with that, I'm going to thank you on behalf of Ardina Seward and Peter Moses and myself. Thank you for being our guest on 914 Wired.
Thank you so much
Charlie. It
for
was a
having
pleasure.
us.